Before we begin the story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a kind comment to encourage us to keep sharing more stories. In September of 2019, I met a girl through the comments section. She was very beautiful and seemed like a wonderful person. After weeks of talking to her, I decided to drive from White Plains to Pittsburgh to spend a weekend with her. I remember my friend asking me, "Have you talked to her much on the phone?" I told him we talked a little, and that most of our conversations were through messages and Facebook Messenger. He advised me to talk to her more so I could avoid any unexpected surprises, something I later realized he was absolutely right about. I won't go into too many details, but it was clear she wasn't what I expected, and we weren't as compatible as I thought. I had planned to stay for the whole weekend, grab some food together, maybe watch a movie. But I decided to end things and head back to New York on Saturday night. I figured that if I left around 7 p.m., I would make it home around 1 a.m. Despite being tired, going back felt better than staying. After grabbing a quick meal, I hit the road around 7:30. A few minutes later, with the sun setting behind me, I saw a billboard for an area called Ross in Pennsylvania. About half an hour after darkness settled in, I saw a well-lit gas station on the left side of the road. Shortly after that, the low fuel warning light turned on. And as always, the fuel light doesn't turn on until the gas station is already far behind you. I was on a divided highway with a wide median, which meant I couldn't just turn around to get back to the station. I asked my phone, "Siri, where's the closest gas station?" It directed me to one about 20 to 30 minutes away. I checked the road. No cars in front of me, none behind. I lowered my eyes to the phone for just 1 second to make sure I was following the right direction, and when I looked up again, I saw her. A girl was standing in the middle of the road directly in front of my car. I slammed the brakes so hard I nearly snapped my neck. The girl went from being a distant shadow, barely visible in the headlights, to just a few feet away from the hood of my car. Her clothes were torn, and blood matted her hair from a head wound. She wasn't wearing shoes, and she looked completely battered. As soon as I stopped, she rushed to the passenger door, trying desperately to open it. It was locked. Her first attempt failed, but then she screamed in a haunting voice, "Open the door, please! Please!" I looked around first to make sure no one was hiding nearby. The thought of someone using an injured girl to lure in a driver was definitely possible. But when I didn't see anyone, and when I heard her terrified screams up close, fear outweighed doubt, and I unlocked the door. She collapsed into the seat and slammed the door shut, yelling, "Drive! Go! Not fast enough! They're coming!" I pressed the gas and asked, "Who's coming?" She said she didn't know, only that they kidnapped her. That's when I noticed the metal handcuffs on her wrist. One closed tightly around her arm, the other dangling. I needed no more explanation, so I sped up. I kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see headlights chasing us, but nothing appeared. When I slowed down a little, the girl screamed again. "Why are you slowing down? Drive! They're coming for you too!" I told her no one was behind us, and that going too fast might get us pulled over by highway patrol. But her next words sent chills down my spine. "Don't think about the police. If they get to the police, they'll kill you too." I had no reason to doubt her. Whoever ties up a girl in the woods and beats her head is clearly willing to do anything. But then, a bigger problem hit me. I was running out of fuel. When I told her we needed to stop for gas, she started panicking and screaming again, but I calmed her as best as I could and told her to call the police and have them meet us at the next gas station.
She dialed 911 and told the dispatcher our location, explaining she had been kidnapped for several days and abused in horrible ways. The details she shared were enough to make anyone's blood boil. After a few turns through a small town, we reached the gas station, but there were no police officers in sight. The girl began crying and screaming. "Where are they? They said they'd come. Where are they?" As we watched cars drive by, a vehicle pulled up to one of the pumps. The moment the girl saw it, she bolted out of the car and sprinted into the forest behind the station. I tried to stop her, but she disappeared quickly between the trees. For a moment, I thought the man in the car might have been one of her kidnappers, but he was just a passerby. When I explained the situation, he calmed down. While fueling up, another car pulled in, and I froze. 3 middle-aged men stepped out, scanning the area in a way that sent terror straight into my chest. One of them walked up to me and asked sharply, "Hey man, you seen a young girl run through here?" I knew telling the truth would end very badly, so I made up a story, close enough to be believable.
Yeah, some crazy girl tried to stop my car in the road, tried to open my door, but I sped off, thought she was trying to steal the car. They laughed in a cold, unsettling way, but 2 of them started circling my car, checking it closely. Those were some of the most terrifying moments of my life. I prayed the girl hadn't left anything behind inside the car. Thankfully, they found nothing. They backed off and eventually drove away. A few minutes later, the police arrived, and I explained everything. The officer praised what I did and said the kidnappers allowing their faces and license plate to appear on the station's cameras might be a huge mistake on their part. 2 days later, the detective called me for more details, but said the girl had not been found and no one had been arrested. To this day, I still think about her. Who was she? Did she survive? Did she really escape? Sometimes I imagine her living a peaceful life now. And sometimes I fear that truth was much darker.
Before we begin, let me tell you about the villa we booked for our dream holiday. It was located in the hills above a place called Lucca, Italy. The villa looked like a small slice of paradise, surprisingly affordable compared to other villas and apartments in the countryside. We booked it for 2 weeks, paid the fees and deposit, and eagerly counted the days until our holiday.
We landed in Pisa late in the afternoon. Our little son, Tom, hated the flight, though he loved the ice cream we had bought for him beforehand. The drive from Pisa to Lucca took about 3 hours. By the time we arrived, it was completely dark, and the countryside was quiet and clean, with stars shining above us. Tom and our daughter, Mal, slept, while my wife stayed awake, enjoying the scenery.
As we slowly drove up the hill to the villa to avoid any collisions, someone suddenly jumped out from the bushes beside the road. The person carried a long, double-barreled gun, aiming straight at us. I slammed on the brakes, panic gripping me. Then a second man appeared, lowering the first man's gun and signaling him not to shoot. Realizing we weren't who they thought, he smiled nervously and reassured us in broken Italian. Through gestures and broken Italian, we understood he meant no harm. My wife asked if they were police, and they smiled and nodded, saying "Polizia," while motioning us to continue. By that time, Tom and Mal were awake and scared. We told them everything was fine, and they believed it, though I remained skeptical about the men being police. The next day, we explored Lucca. We found a small bar serving paninis, espresso, and pastries. While my wife and Tom played table football, I discovered the bartender spoke English. He recommended local restaurants. Suddenly, a group of older men at the bar pointed to the TV showing a news report of a nearby murder, almost in the same area where the armed men had jumped at us. Back at the villa, preparing to go out for dinner, I told my wife about the murder. Though unsettling, we realized it was a risk we had to take. We focused on enjoying our holiday, tasting the home-cooked food which our son loved. Each evening after dinner, we tried to pay the bill, but the owner insisted it was already paid by unknown benefactors. At first, we thought the mysterious benefactors were linked to the local mafia. The meals were always free, yet the family serving us seemed happy. Each time we visited, they even brought gelato for our 4-year-old son without us asking. We never saw the men again, leaving us to wonder who they were and why they ensured our comfort. Despite the intense encounter with armed men on our first night, we continued our holiday, exploring the surroundings and enjoying the local cuisine. Over time, we realized that the mysterious men were likely ensuring our safety in some unexplainable way. Our second visit to Italy would be far calmer,
without any more nighttime threats or free meals arranged mysteriously.
Reflecting on that first trip, it was amazing, yet intense. Every meal, every interaction had a sense of underlying tension and mystery. While we enjoyed the beauty of Lucca, we remained aware that something extraordinary had protected us, even if we never discovered the full truth behind it. In the end, our vacation became a story to remember, a mixture of beauty, suspense, and unexpected kindness. Though we never understood who ensured our safety, the experience remained unforgettable, and it shaped how we approached future travels in Italy, with caution, curiosity, and awe.
Before we start the stories, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a nice comment to encourage us to keep posting more stories. I live in Chicago, and at the time, my job had shifts from 12 noon to 10 p.m., 6 nights a week. Sometimes I didn't leave work until 10:30, so I was always driving late at night. I hated it, especially when I was hungry and tired.
The streets of Chicago at night were full of lunatics and outlaws. Sometimes I'd bump into them outside the liquor store when I stopped to buy cigarettes, or in apartment building parking lots. I even had one of them jump out from a dumpster at me, trying to rob me, and after a while, I got used to it. Then, one night, it got crazier than usual. I had finished at the liquor store and stopped at a late-night convenience store to grab groceries. Everything seemed quiet at first, and I thought I might be lucky. But as I got back on the road, an accident happened.
It started when one car in front of me tried to pass another. Horns were honking, and a passenger stuck his arm out to give the other driver the middle finger. The two cars kept going side by side until a stoplight. I was right behind them. If something bad was going to happen, it would be then, and I wasn't wrong. The passenger got out and went over to the other car, pounding his fist on the passenger window. He yelled, "Get out! Say that to my face, son of a bitch!" The door wouldn't open. Then the light turned green and chaos began. I heard 2 sharp explosions, gunshots. At first, it seemed like they missed, but then I realized the passenger had been hit. Blood poured from his head as he stumbled toward his car. He tried to steady himself, clutching the wound, but his legs gave out. He fell to his knees, then to his hands, reaching for the car door that was just out of reach before blacking out. People around started honking and shouting, trying to get out of the way. Cars swerved left and right. I froze, staring at the man's body. You could see bone under the wound, and blood spurted from the hole in his skull. It was one of the worst things I had ever seen, but I couldn't look away. I called 911 and joined a group of bystanders trying to help. The man was critically injured and likely dead by the time he was put on a stretcher.
I told the police everything I saw, but I couldn't get the shooter's license plate or the car information. After that, I was technically free to go, but it wasn't over for me. I replayed the scene in my mind constantly. I stopped eating well, didn't go out enough, and felt mentally broken. Eventually, I spoke to a friend who helped me seek treatment. It wasn't a miracle cure, but over time, it helped me calm down and regain some normalcy. This was the story, the night that changed me.
Before we begin the unforgettable story, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a nice comment, as you do, to encourage us to keep posting stories. Although I have been away for a long time, I am also an uncle and a journalist. From the late 60s to the early 2000s, I reported for newspapers such as The Times, the BBC, and the Associated Press. My career took me around the world, from Africa to the Americas to the Far East and the Middle East, but perhaps no place on earth had a greater impact than the one I am going to write about today. Afghanistan. On Christmas Eve, 1979, after a period of political instability in the Afghan government, Soviet paratroopers jumped from the sky over Kabul and seized the capital's airport. The next day, the Soviets confirmed their presence to the world. It was Afghanistan, and they were there. My colleagues and I were not just observers. For two reasons, I was deeply concerned. First, if Afghanistan fell, the Soviets would have almost unhindered access to India, a nation they had long tried to lure away from the West. Second, all empires and great powers that tried to subjugate Afghanistan had failed in achieving long-term control. The Greeks tried, then the Mongols, and the British tried on 3 occasions. But no one was able to conquer what became known as the graveyard of empires. Initially, all bets were on the Soviets, who had thousands of advanced battle tanks, while the Mujahideen had only horses. But as Russian casualties mounted, international interest in the brave rebels grew. They traded their shepherd sticks for AK-47s and gave the Russians as much as they received. And that is where my humble role comes in. The United States, one of the biggest supporters of the Afghan Mujahideen, apart from the Gulf Arabs, channeled support through Pakistan. Weapons, large quantities of food and medicine were smuggled through the mountain passes on the Afghan-Pakistani border. The same applied to journalists. Once editors realized they could send us in and out safely, assignments came rapidly.
Of course, one could withdraw if desired, and the first to do so often had families or young children. I was a young, single man, ready to prove myself. So I went to Peshawar, Pakistan, not far from the Afghan border. There, I met a man named Naveed Afghan, who had been studying English at Kabul University before the invasion. Many of his fellow intellectuals supported the Afghan communist regime and welcomed the Red Army. Naveed saw things differently. Unfortunately for him, his colleagues were fully aware of his dissent. He fled Kabul as arrests began and joined the Mujahideen. Fluent English was almost always best used in the background, sometimes via telephone from the front lines with an AK-47. His mission was to comfort viewers and gather international support for their cause. As a result, he became well known among Afghan refugees and those seeking refuge in Peshawar. Naveed took me to Shere Khan, Afghanistan, to a tea house where many of the country's refugees gathered. There, he introduced me to a woman who had lost all 7 of her children when Soviet helicopter gunships targeted her village. She was a broken woman. Behind those eyes, she claimed that hope was the only thing keeping her alive. Hope that the communists would be driven from her homeland. I met people who bore the brunt of the occupiers' attempts to drag Afghanistan into an evil empire. Naveed asked me if I was ready to meet the people fighting for these refugees and their right to return. We had never felt more prepared for anything in our lives. The next morning, we planned our trip to Afghanistan. Soviet helicopters patrolled the border areas during the day, so we had no choice but to travel at night. Crossing at night was potentially more dangerous than during the day. It wasn't just the Mujahideen or Spetsnaz agents we had to watch out for. Bandits roamed avalanche-prone areas, and the mountains were home to wolves, bears, and snow leopards, all eager to prey on stranded travelers. The only car Naveed could get was an old Tajik vehicle, which seemed to start only after a complex series of prayers. Despite all this, I was determined to try. That evening, as soon as the sun set, we set off. The Lakhan Road rose toward the mountains, looming in the distance like sleeping giants, bathed in the orange glow of sunset. I navigated while there was still some light, but as dusk settled, Naveed took over driving. He had detailed instructions from his Mujahideen contacts, which were crucial for our safety. Fortunately, Naveed knew the mountain trails very well, but he suffered from a severe migraine. He rubbed his eyes, cursed under his breath, and pinched the bridge of his nose. I gave him pain pills and took over for a while, but that only worsened his headache. Having learned to drive on the left side of the road in England, I struggled with Afghanistan's right-hand traffic. Every now and then, Naveed reminded me, "Sir David, please drive on the right." I corrected myself, but driving in darkness made it difficult to follow precisely. Eventually, Naveed conceded, "Drive whichever way you like, Sir David, but be careful if you veer too far right." I tried my best, but even careful driving could not prevent a wrong turn. Each mistake provoked Naveed's anger, punctuated with "May God forgive me" in Arabic. We hoped to familiarize ourselves with our surroundings in case we ran into Russian special forces or other threats. Naveed's migraine peaked, and I became the driver for the foreseeable future. We drove on winding roads, almost in complete darkness, until suddenly a large spotlight blinded us. Someone shouted in Pashto,
and we were unsure if they were Mujahideen, pro-Russian forces, bandits, or Spetsnaz agents. Naveed responded immediately, and our identities were clarified. The Mujahideen lowered their weapons and laughed. After greetings, they provided detailed instructions for the safest route through the mountains, avoiding traps, explosives, and Soviet checkpoints. They planted explosives along specific stretches of the road to target enemy vehicles, keeping the right side of the road in mind. By the time we reached the designated areas, it was calm. The Mujahideen were satisfied that their positions were secure and blessed by God. I conducted an interview with a commander and other fighters in the camp, taking pictures and documenting their stories. After a few days, we returned to Peshawar safely, escorting ourselves through the mountains carefully. I had my story, a scoop that would make newspapers envious. I returned home without incident, but a small part of me would remain in Afghanistan forever. I made 2 visits to the country, once in 1992 and again shortly after the American invasion in 2001. The first visit filled me with hope that warring factions might reconcile, but that hope was short-lived. Afghanistan would endure more conflict and suffering, especially under the rise of Osama bin Laden and others. Yet I did not lose my sense of hope completely. There is still a place in my heart for Afghanistan, refusing to give up on its people. Thank you for listening. Press the notification bell to stay updated on future stories. If you arrived here, we may have finished telling the story. We hope you liked it, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. See you in the next stories, God willing, and peace and God's mercy be upon you.